And welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and we're just out here looking at a few things going on in the garden. I'm going to take you inside to see a few things here in a moment, but we're back into the part 2. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to see notices on new videos as they come out, especially when I have 2 different parts like this. So if you're really liking the videos, you like to go through the garden, that way you don't miss a part 2 and you're kind of left on a cliffhanger and wondering what the heck, where did she go? So anyway, here are the potatoes. These are the Kennebec potatoes. They still have not died back a whole lot. They stopped blooming about 2 weeks ago, so we've got potatoes in there, I'm sure. But the vines are still lush, green, bushy, and filled out. We've only got a few leaves on them that have kind of died off at the bottom. Otherwise, they still look wonderful. So I may have to do the same thing this year that I did last year. We'll keep leaving them in and hopefully the vines will die back. But I may have to do the same thing. I just may have to go ahead and pull them anyway, regardless of the vines dying off or not. Maybe they just really like the soil here. So anyway, we've got runners on the butternut squash that are happening, and they're starting to really take off, and we got blooms on them, so hopefully we'll get some butternut. Because once they start producing, it does not take very long, about a week, 2 weeks, and they're almost full up to size. We have picked more than a gallon of beans so far. Our beans just keep getting bigger and bigger. We're about halfway up the trellis. Like I said, last year we were already out to the top of the trellis. It was all filled out. We were picking beans everywhere, but I have picked some beans off of the pole beans so far, and I have missed having half runners. It has been years since I've grown half runner beans. That's what we always grew when I was growing up back in East Tennessee, was half runners. And you can always tell the flavor, their distinct flavor difference between them and any other bean that I've ever had. I steamed some yesterday. In the South, we cook them to death, as we say. But here, when I've gotten a little bit more into north and west and all that stuff, I have picked up on cooking different ways of cooking beans and things like that. So I steamed them yesterday with a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper, and a little tiny bit of some bacon grease, and it was so delicious. But you could tell the difference between the half runner beans and the contender bush beans by a lot. And I love the contender beans. They're great, but they just still do not hold a candle to the half runner beans. And I think I'll continue to grow half runner beans. So that'll be my pole variety bean for the future, which they're only half the size as far as pole beans than the other ones. So I think I'll continue growing those as a pole bean, and my contender bush beans, and just a lot more of them next season than the rattlesnake pole beans or the Kentucky Wonder pole beans or the Japanese yard longs, which haven't done anything yet. So I think I'll continue to grow the other ones versus those in the future from now on, because those are tried and true. I did a little bit of experimenting this season, not quite as much as I did last season, but now that we've gotten to where we know what we want, then that is what we're going to stick with. The peas have outdone themselves all over the place. You can see peas are still hanging everywhere in there. We got to pick some more. They did not take but a couple of days before they started producing peas again after we had picked. So we've got to come in here and pick again. But anyway, those peas have knocked it out of the park. The only thing is that we don't really care for the Alaskan snow peas as much. We actually like a pea inside of the pod. So we are leaning more towards the Cascadia pea type. However, I like more peas than just what Cascadia peas give you, because they're kind of a short pea pod with maybe at the most about 6 or 7 peas. I've got a new variety called First 13 that I'm going to be trying next season. I was going to put them in this season, but I don't think we have enough time left, because they're about a 60 to 65 day window, and I just don't think we have enough time left. Even though they'll handle a frost and stuff like that, when it gets to that point, usually they just will not produce very well, so I don't want to waste the seed, so I'm going to wait until next season and plant the First 13, and we should have a much longer pod I may do the super snappy as well because those have been very good this year. There just was not enough of them. So we've got a couple of more rows in there that are coming on that have not bloomed yet or produced yet, and that's because they were newer. So we ended up with 6 rows in total of peas in this area where the trellises are, but we've got like 2 to 4 rows that are not producing yet. So they're coming on. They're about halfway up the trellis. They're basically climbing over the old peas. So once they get on up the trellis, they'll start producing, and then we will start having more peas. But in the meantime, I just think I really would like more peas in the pod instead of a shorter pod that produces like crazy. If we had more, it just ended up not being enough. There's not enough to put away. I picked a gallon of peas. We ate half of them, and we've got half a gallon left, but they're not really a shelling variety of peas so much unless you let them go a lot longer, except for the Alaskan snow peas, which are not really a shelling variety at all. So I think we're just going to go the other way with the first 13 next season, and that'll be the one that we will probably stick with from that point forward. So anyway, beans doing great. We've got the red curry back behind the beans that are still not looking as good as the other red curry. They are vining, they are blooming, as you can see, and they will produce, but they will not be producing as much as the other red curry vines are doing. And I'm not real sure what happened here, other than maybe I just planted them more shallow, or something happened on my end. But I mean, they're doing something. It's just that they don't look the healthiest in the world. If you notice, their color is slightly off from the other vines over there. But hopefully they'll produce something pretty soon, and we'll see what happens. I mean, you can see that the runners are coming out of the garden, so they're healthy enough for that. So all of the beans through there, contenders, they're still putting on beans like crazy. And then we're over here in the second main garden with the Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes. That's the potatoes there. But they are blooming, and you can see a bloom right there. Hopefully they'll start producing soon. I haven't seen anything as yet as far as the Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes go, but just blooms. The shorter one is still shorter, so I'm not real sure whether to go ahead and pull it out or just let it grow. Either way, it's not really hurting anything, so I may just leave it in there and see if it actually starts to produce anything. The Guido Kassaman squash are still doing really well. They're just really young, but they are starting to get runners, and they are starting to get blooms, so hopefully we'll get something out of those. And then we have a lemon cucumber here in the front that is just growing by leaps and bounds every day, so we should start having cucumbers on that pretty soon. Our corn is pretty beautiful. My partner was commenting about that yesterday. He said it really is very beautiful corn. It's just short because that's the variety that it is. It's an early Sunglow hybrid, but it does have 2 and 3 ears on just about every stalk. So thank God for that. Hopefully we'll get some good ears out of this. It may turn out to be nothing. You know, you don't know until you open the ears up. And we won't be opening these up until probably the end of August or first part of September. Even though they're producing right now, the silks will not die off on those until then. And then you wait actually a little bit longer from that. It's about 6 to 8 weeks after they start putting ears on before you harvest. So they are tasseling and blooming like crazy all throughout here. The only section that's left that hasn't tasseled has been at the very back where it is shaded. And look at all those beautiful zinnias. We're having zinnias basically bloom every day now. So far, nothing but pinks. And I'm hoping to get some other colors other than just pink. But this is the only area that hasn't tasseled as yet. And as you can see, it is only probably about a 3-foot wide area. But this corn is going to tassel because it is mature. You can see that there. Some of it is being pulled down by the beans, but it will still go ahead and tassel. It will still have ears. It'll just be a little weird and funky. But we've got loads of rattlesnake pole beans, Kentucky Wonders, Royal Burgundy bush beans, And I think that's all we have in here as far as beans, but there's beans in every row alongside of the corn, and even the Royal Burgundy bush beans have got runners on them, and they were supposed to be bush beans. So they have started climbing stuff, and the leaves on them are massive in comparison to any of the other beans. If I could get over there, I would show you, but they are back there. They're the first two rows on the other side of the corn of Royal Burgundy bush beans, and they have just been going nuts. Kentucky Wonders, all of the beans through here look so much healthier than the beans over in the main section of the garden. And I think next year that I will put the beans over here. We will move them out of the first main garden. And I'm actually going to put the potatoes over where I've shown you the Yukon Gold potatoes are. We're going to have that whole section in potatoes and start moving everything more this way because it gets more sun out here. This is the south facing area near the house. So it gets more sun through here except for this one little shaded strip. You can see how it is shaded here versus over there. And the potatoes don't mind the shade at all. You've noticed that some of them are actually a little bit taller than the potatoes out front that are more in the sun. So that's why I think that moving them over to where the Yukon Golds are that get more shade than this is going to be just fine. So we'll move the potatoes out of here, probably put the tomatoes and more beans over here, and then the rest of the garden will be for the other things. And we will actually be expanding the garden on out where you see my pumpkins are that I've shown you earlier. We'll be expanding that on out around the north side and have more squash and stuff over there. So we may actually move that out of the main garden completely and have them all growing over in that section because they seem to do really well over there. They enjoy it. And the main garden section can be used then for more sun-loving plants. So anyway, some of these are still pretty small, a couple of them, and they may not do anything, but for the most part, from here on, looks like we're going to have tassels and we're going to have corn. Like this one right here is ready to tassel right now. We've got a tassel happening on this one right here, and they'll catch up. Like I said, they would just be a little bit slower than the rest, but they will still produce. Once they get a little bit taller, it actually gets into the sun, so that way they can start doing their thing. Our Tahitian squash is in here. It's just kind of buried into everything else, and it's actually running. I just noticed that the runner had made it all the way over. Oh, I just saw it a second ago, over to here. So you can see a runner right here for the Tahitian squash. And we're starting to get Tahitian squash on there. So hopefully we'll get some Tahitian squash. The vines are not as long as they were last season. That may just simply be because they are shaded a little bit more, because I do have more corn than I did last season. Last season, if you go back and look in the videos, we had corn only up to about here, right here, because all of this still had tree roots in it. I've gotten all of those out, and so we were able to extend all the way out to the edge. So we have lots of stuff going on in there with corn. And we actually have a couple of Armenian cucumbers in here. I'm not sure if they will do anything, but I need to thin them down to one. And we do have some white pumpkins in here as well. And those are running, they are blooming, and they do have some little squash on them. So hopefully we'll get some white pumpkins in here. But it's basically like a modified Three Sisters, so we've got just about everything going on. Here is all of our fall plants still coming on. We just got this set up a couple days ago, and I did get it outside. And like I said, it's just rained like heck, so they should come up pretty soon. And we have some more plants to give out to people because I've already planted most of my fall plants in the garden. So these are for other people except for that. And we did clean out the lettuce out of the galvanized steel container here, and we've got more lettuce planted in. This should be coming up pretty soon. It's been planted a couple days now. And our transplanted tomatoes are looking pretty good. They'll be a little wilty for a couple of days, and then they will perk up. This one has already perked up. This one's still a little wilty, but perking up. And this one was just done yesterday, so that's why it's still a little wilty. And we got people with Cheyenne Frontier Days thinking they're race cars. So that's what you're hearing in the background. The cucumbers, burpee picklers, still coming on. They're getting in their mature leaves now, and we'll start running pretty soon. Hibiscus are still doing quite amazing, and so is all of the container garden. So we won't go through all of this because we just had a bit of a garden tour the other day. These tomatoes are really surprising me how big they're getting. We did harvest some of the tarragon. We just basically removed the lower leaves, and we left the upper section so it can continue to bush out and produce. In this container, I kind of scooted it out a little bit so it would have a little bit more room. And now you can really see just how big those plants are. And the kiddie pool conversion with the watermelons and strawberries and basil, it is at least 20 foot wide now with just runners from the watermelons. And it's starting to set watermelons on there. They're the doll baby. And you can see we've got watermelons going on just about everywhere now. So watermelons, watermelons, watermelons. And I am so glad to see them. We've eaten a couple of the yellow pear tomatoes so far. They are getting ripe, and they are the biggest that we've ever had. They are just massive in comparison with last season, and we had a lot last season too, but just producing like crazy and just continuing to get taller and producing at the top too. So we've got clumps and clumps and clumps of those. Cantaloupes looking amazing. Again, more watermelons, watermelons, watermelons. And we got this cleaned out day before yesterday. Planted some more lettuce in here. We harvested the dill out of here. That is yellow chamomile right there in that section. And we left the lettuce over here, but I'm thinking about going ahead and taking it out and putting some more lettuce in here. And our squash in here are doing great. They're starting to get their mature leaves now, and we'll start getting a lot bigger. Morning glories are really picking up in growth. And our contender beans that we planted over here that are 40-day are up and growing. So they've got a good start. I may actually plant some more in here because now we have this that's empty. And we may plant some more chamomile right here in this little circle section. And our cucumbers in here are doing great. So is everything else. Zinnias are blooming or about to bloom. And just looking amazing in here. We did cut back some of the elf thyme. So you can see here we cut some of it back. I may actually cut a little bit back, a little more. And we still haven't gotten the elf thyme out of over here, but we want to do that. Get this all out of here and then transplant some of these daylilies into other sections. And then our cosmos through here are just about ready to start blooming, I think. They are pretty big because I'm actually up on a concrete slab, so it's a little bit down in there. And I need to get out here and harvest some lavender, which I haven't done yet. It's all blooming and pretty. Just hate to do it when it's blooming. And we've got more lettuce in here. This is the red marvel, and it's starting to turn red. So everything looking fantastic. We even got some wildflowers growing now and blooming. You can see all of those in there. That's some native Cheyenne flowers. But you can see the container garden just looking fantastic. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out. And there is a yellow pear tomato that is ripe right now. So I will leave you with that, and we will see you in the next one.